Now, if YouTube brought you here, it's probably because you've seen many of the TikToks and Reels that depict medieval and Renaissance cats as being warped and twisted. I mean, look at this one. It's definitely a cat, but it has the face of a man having a midlife crisis.
The devil.
Here's the interesting part. Many of the people who painted these cats, they could paint fabric that looked real. They could paint skin that looked like it was breathing. They could capture the light in the eyes of the subject in the room. Why was it so hard for them to draw cats? And if this doesn't float your boat, just stay for all the hilarious bad animal paintings you're about to see. They are a treat. I'm going to dig into the reasons for this because there's actually more than one. But the spoiler is they could. They just didn't really want to. And the reason is a 500-year trail of religion, superstition, and some seriously aggressive copy and pasting. A lot of the cursed cat images we will look at, and the ones on the internet, are not actually from the Renaissance. They're much older. They're from medieval manuscripts. And they're often drawn by monks in the margins of prayer books, which were called illuminated manuscripts. We got cats churning butter, cats playing some sort of fiddle, frig, even a snail cat. Why not, eh? Beats dying of some pox. However, these illuminated manuscripts are very important to see how it all started, because whatever made those monks draw cats, like they're assembling one from a police sketch, didn't disappear when the Renaissance started. It just got a nicer coat of paint and some more detail to the fur. And once you know why it happened and watch this video, I'm hoping you will learn to spot it in some of your favorite artwork. We're going to explore three main reasons. The first one is religious. Second is logistics, and the third is a really cool twist that kind of proves that the other two are valid. So first, it's important to note that in medieval and Renaissance Christian art, many animals were not just animals. They were highly symbolic, and each of them had an assigned job in an artwork. When people paint dogs, they're often trying to show loyalty. That's why dogs are curled up at the feet of knights on their gravestones. They sit quietly at the bottom during wedding portraits. It shows something that is faithful, literally, unto death. Now, horses meant nobility and power, and they were often combined with military prowess, right? Because to own a horse was something a common person could not do. Cats got the worst assignment of the bunch. Cats, quite frankly, meant deceit, sin, sometimes, quite literally, the devil. Funny enough, this wasn't just neighborhood gossip. It came right from the top. In 1233, Pope Gregory IX issued an official document describing an alleged secret cult in Germany whose devil worship ritual centered on a black cat. Now, this document was really only about one specific group that was under investigation, but the fallout lasted for centuries. Cats, especially black cats, now had the church's own paperwork tying them to Satan. And if there's anything a ruling ecclesiastical theocracy loves, it's a good old scapegoat, or scape cat. So watch what happens once cat, in the shared visual language of the day, quietly means evil. Painter Domenico Ghirlandaio does the Last Supper fresco for a Florence convent in 1480. No cat anywhere in it. A few years later, he paints the same scene again for a different convent, but this time he adds one cat sitting right next to Judas, staring directly out from the painting at you. That's not a beloved monastery mouser getting immortalized. That's Judas's furry little hype man, his sadistic and demonic sidekick, telling him to betray Jesus. Albrecht Durer pulls the same trick in his famous 1504 engraving of Adam and Eve. There's a cat curled up at their feet, its tail coiling into the exact same shape as the serpent up in the tree above them. But you don't need a reference model for treachery, you just need something that reads slightly off in the painting. And a cat does a pretty good job for free. It sits in the setting, it changes it just enough to hint at subtle evil. Now, reason number two is pretty funny. It's a lot less spooky, and honestly, it makes total sense. Can you imagine trying to draw the still life of a cat? Cats are miserable to draw from life, and most of these artists weren't even trying. The cat wasn't the focus when you have nobility sitting for hours at a time. Also, think about which animals got formal portraits back then. War horses, hunting dogs, both trainable. Both can be tied to a courtyard and told to hold a pose for 6 hours while somebody hand grinds pigment. A noble's favorite hound was also a status symbol. You commissioned its portrait, the way people would photograph a sports car today. If the sports car could also retrieve pheasants and bite peasants. Cats do not do any of this. A cat asked to hold a pose leaves. If it has somewhere else to be, it's going. So without a cooperative model, illustrators, a lot of the monks working in monastery scriptoriums, leaned on something called a model book, a shared reusable library of stock images meant to be traced and recycled. The instant the very first template cat in one of these books had a weirdly flat face or backwards facing paws, every monk who copied it afterward inherited that mistake. Sometimes they quietly added a few new ones of their own for generations. It's a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy, except the copier is a guy with a quill and no actual cat in front of him. And it wasn't just unique to cats. A 13th century draftsman named Villard de Honnecourt filled a whole sketchbook with animal studies, including lions he'd insisted he's drawn from real life. I mean, people would lie too back then. Unlucky for Villard, art historians nowadays can compare many different types of lions drawn at the same age, and they notice that his looks suspiciously like lions from manuscripts a century before him. Now, we can't really be too hard on them because there's probably a lot of logistical issues related to the sheer complexity of working with difficult subjects, pigments, and sometimes even authorities. Sometimes it made sense to just wing it because the main focus wasn't the animal. The main focus was the Bible or whatever script they were making at the time. We have religious authorities demonizing cats. We have logistical challenges, which mean people copy fake images of cats. Brings us to the third reason. Leonardo da Vinci. And of course it was him, right? So Leonardo da Vinci is basically the walking mission statement of the Renaissance. He stopped trusting what old books and old drawings said and actually looked at the animal and painted it himself. He's famous for dissecting human corpses because he didn't trust old anatomy books. And near the end of his life, sometime around 1513, he pointed the same obsession at his own cat. Personally, I think this next one is so freaking cool. What survives today is just a single sheet of paper, kept today at the Royal Collection at Windsor Castle. It's packed with more than 20 individual sketches of a cat, mid-pounce, washing itself, one curled up asleep in a tight little ball, one with its back arched and its fur standing straight up mid-fright. He throws in 7 studies of a lioness for comparison, and his own handwritten note on the page is just a mini biomechanics lecture on how bendy a cat's spine is, with the lion singled out as the star pupil. And once you see this pattern, you'll notice it everywhere in old art, because it was never about the cats. It was about how culture decides what's worth studying and painting closely. And more importantly, culture determines what's okay to fake or omit. Now we're going to circle back to Albrecht Dürer. It's pretty funny. He's the cat devil guy. 11 years after he did the Adam and Eve engraving, he hears about a rhinoceros gifted to the Pope. And without ever laying eyes on the actual animal, he makes a woodcut of it based purely on somebody else's letter and a rough sketch. The result becomes one of the most famous animal prints in history, and it gives a rhino an extra horn on its back and a full hide of what looks like riveted plate armor. And it suffers the same fate as cats. No live model, so imagination fills the gaps with whatever assumptions were already lying around. Might wonder why I'm bringing up a rhino and this is about cats? Well, here's the kicker. The wrong rhino becomes so iconic that European illustrators kept copying the wrong version over and over again with the extra horn for centuries. Even after real rhinos were seen, people could tell it was wrong. Same photocopy of a photocopy problem as medieval cats. Old pictures are just easier to trust than new eyes. So the next time you're in a museum or scrolling past an old painting, or you see one of those social media reels that say artists can't draw, it's not the artist failing. There's 500-year-old evidence hiding in plain sight of exactly what society trusted and exactly what it didn't, which determined what to focus attention on and what was acceptable to paint. So a quick recap, cats got drawn wrong for many reasons. They were a walking symbol of sin and the devil. Nobody cared if the anatomy was right. They refused to sit still for a portrait, like a good hunting dog. So artists simply copied old templates instead of watching a real one. And by the time a real cat was drawn with such detail, it was already hundreds of years too late. I think there's a lesson in this too. Now we risk the same pitfalls with AI and faceless content, especially if younger people start taking what they see generated at face value with respects to history and art, which is partly why I started this channel. So if you're like-minded like me and would like to see less AI slop on YouTube, I humbly ask you to like, comment, and subscribe to help support creators that are standing against it. Behold the devil, Oreo. Hey, buddy.